Great. So yeah, as we mentioned, thanks everyone for coming along. We've already done a bit of a preamble. Let's just go on to the next slide, Kelly. Can I run it? Let me see. Yeah. So basically, yeah, what I'd like to do is just teach you how to prepare, how to choose the appropriate lead nurture campaign, and then deploy it. So that's really what I want everyone to feel like they can get out of the session. Also at the end, I've got some examples. If you wanted to see some real life examples, I'm happy to send it your way. So happy to do that. Next one, and a little bit about me. So next slide, Kelly. So yeah, I run Concurve Content Marketing for the last 3 years or so. I've also been an author, journalist in a previous life, and I'm a tutor with the Morris Journalism Academy. So yeah, all about sort of content creation, and essentially we help experts share their knowledge through bringing together a whole bunch of marketing communications solutions. So next one, Kelly, please. So the first thing to probably just to think about when we think about a lead, so really how I define a lead is it's a new contact in your CRM. So it can be a name, an email, and a contact number. So before we start any lead nurture campaign, it's really important to choose who your ideal client will be with that particular campaign, because we all might have a database, but it's no good sending out sort of communications to everyone. Ideally, you want to be targeted with it, which is where having some sort of triage system comes into play. And you can do this through your own methods. You can sort of triage them over the phone or using your online system. But just really important to note that, yeah, before you get started, just think about how you're going to triage who you want in this particular campaign. So cool. Now, what we'd like to do at the moment, just before we go any further, thanks, Kelly, is if you can think about what's the one pain point at the moment that you might have with lead nurture, or what's the one thing that you really want to know more about. So you've got your chat there. If you're able to just jump in and have we'll give it a minute or so for you to record an answer here. So yeah, what's the one thing maybe you're struggling with when you think about nurturing your leads? And we'll just give it a minute or so to run through that.
I've got some here. Prospects not responding, consistency, deploying consistency, time consuming, hard to stretch, find time to spend personalizing leads, available time. So it looks like time's one of the key things. Knowing what to share, and systemizing the process. They're the key things that came through there, Andrew.
Fantastic. And yeah, certainly when you think about time is a big one. And the great thing about the technology nowadays, and if you set up your lead nurture campaign, you can take a lot of that time away and let it do it for you. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And obviously at the end, we've got a bit more of a Q&A we can go through and try and go through that a little bit more. Yes, pestering and nurturing. Well, if my view there, Maria, if they've agreed to be on your system, then assume that they want to hear from you until they click unsubscribe. So feel free. And and that's great. Thank you, Craig. Yes, sequencing and grading the leads. So yeah, we can certainly have some time to talk about these sorts of things at the end. Now, just a little bit of a preamble about why it's important to nurture leads. So there's three main reasons why I believe this is the case. First of all, you can generate high quality clients. So if you think about when someone is interested in your product or your service, by nurturing them in the right sort of way, or at least just keeping you top of mind, by giving them valuable education, you're actually creating an experience for them to teach them how to become a better client. So ultimately, through that system, they feel like they get to know more about what you offer, and they also, as a result, they become a high quality client rather than just anyone that comes through the door. So that's the value of a nurture. The second thing is reducing your customer acquisition cost. So essentially, if you think about what this means is the time that you spend in front of a customer by setting up some automation or a lead nurture campaign, you're letting that education piece or that that sort of piece done for you through the technology and through your own sort of strategy. Because you think about all the time you spend in sales conversations and maybe calling and doing other sort of methods. Well, lead nurture will help reduce the time that you can spend on that and put it into your lead nurture. So I always like that. And probably the third thing is obviously from that, when you've got leads and you're trying to nurture and warm them up, you're establishing authority in your industry because, again, you're appealing to the particular customer. And if you do it in a relevant way, then they're going to, when they think of, well, who do I go to when I need to need to have this particular question or this particular service, then they're going to see you in a high authority. So again, it's about keeping top of mind in the right sort of way, as David was saying before. So does that all make sense, guys? A bit of a thumbs up if we're on the right track so far. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, cool. So next slide, please, Kelly. So yeah, the next little part here I want to talk about, first of all, before you start a sort of lead nurture campaign, let's talk about the technology. So obviously, let's use what's available to us. And what I like to do is start with, first of all, when I think of lead nurture, the first thing that I come to mind that I think about is well, email. So if you've got a subscriber or if you've got someone who's gone through the process and they're in your they've made known that they're interested in your service, then there's three different or main types of email technologies that I like to recommend. So the first one is Mailchimp. It's probably the simplest or the easiest to use from a user experience. If you've never done any kind of lead nurture or communication point of view, then have a look at Mailchimp. It's pretty cost effective and it's pretty easy to use. The next one there, further down, that orange one is HubSpot, and they double with. It's a great thing about HubSpot is they also have a CRM attached, so you can use it pretty intuitively. And then Active Campaign's another, a bit more complex, I've sort of found, but still, it does a good job. And obviously there's other ones there, but those are probably three to have a look at before you get started. And really, by doing that, you're able to at least sort of get a flow going. The second part of that is around social media. So again, lead nurture doesn't necessarily have to just be email. There's a lot of ways that we can nurture our prospects. By choosing social media, we're doing it more in a sort of broadcast way, unless you're doing things like LinkedIn, particular, outreach, which we'll cover in this session. So there's those are the three probably main ones that you might want to consider depending on your industry. So LinkedIn, Facebook, I know that the outcomes guys use a lot of nurture, lead gen and nurture for Facebook, and obviously Instagram as well. So just keeping your community engaged and educated. And the third one is around automation. And so what that really means is, a lot of people put time in the chat box, and by using this technology to your advantage, you're actually able to give yourself a lot of time back. And you'll find that Mailchimp and HubSpot and Active Campaign, they're all set up for you to create, to give yourself some time back by scheduling emails in advance, and or by maybe creating an automated sequence that when someone subscribes or clicks on your subscribes to a newsletter or downloads something, then if you've got it set up, then that will do the work for you. So automation is great. I've also put this here, that P is a tool called Prospect Ladder, which we've personally been experimenting with at Concurve. And it's, if you're interested in nurturing or connecting through LinkedIn, then it's one of, and there's many tools out there, but that's a way for you to, again, automate the process. So you're creating a lead nurture tactic for people on LinkedIn. So that's pretty handy. And finally, if you're running events, Eventbrite, for example, can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you and actually send a whole bunch of reminder emails you just got to plug in the event details, and it will actually do the 24 hours before, 7 days before. So if, by spending a little bit of time selecting the tools, you're able to get a lot of time back. So yeah, start with technology. That's probably the first thing. Okay, cool. Thanks, Kelly. Now, I just want to spend a little bit of time on messaging. So when we go to craft our message, very, at a sort of broader sort of space, choose one particular customer segment to start with. So for example, it might be a business coach for us. And from there, what you want to do is ask yourself these sort of key questions. And this is going to do is this is going to give you the difference and the benefits and the reasons why this particular customer segment are going to buy from you. And then you can craft your messaging that flows from that. So this typically takes a few sessions, of deep thinking. So I'm not expecting you guys to answer these questions now, but just keep this in mind. What are the problems that your customers are trying to solve? Make a big list of what that looks like. What tasks do they need to do that are painful? So what things do they need to do that you think you could take away from them? What pain relief can you offer, which is related back to your problems and services now that you know what they're going through? And finally, what are the other benefits that your products and services provide? So by answering these sorts of questions, you're able to then craft and really build out your lead nurture campaign. So I suggest that you spend a bit of time, and obviously, your coach is there to support and really fleshing out some of this information for you. Next one, Kelly. And then what we'd like to do is also then talk about you've got to design your messaging. And again, at a sort of a high level, if you think about if someone, if you put yourself in their shoes and they're going to receive your correspondence, your email, your messaging, then I like to look at this sort of simple way of looking at it is basically hook, story, offer. So if the hook is essentially the pain point that you're trying to solve or the challenge that they're trying to face right now. So if they don't open it, if it's not compelling enough, obviously it can be a bit challenging. So think about a strong opening. The story, relates to, well, what are they looking to really solve? So, tell a story about how perhaps you've solved that particular challenge in the past. And obviously think about some of the correspondence that you receive from different organizations and see how they craft things. And finally, the offer. So this is obviously about solving their deep need, something that you can do to take away some of that pain relief. And it might be an offer to have a chat with them. It might be a downloadable. It might be an event. There's different ways you can sort of do this, or simply a link to your diary. So there's a little bit about messaging. Again, it can be a bit more in depth, but that's a bit of a high level. So what we're going to do now is talk through some of these worked examples. And I want to run through probably the four key ones. So newsletter, online event, LinkedIn, and lead magnet. Now, a newsletter is essentially something that you send out to educate your community and be top of mind. Online event could be something where you're speaking at an event or running an event yourself. LinkedIn is where you might be connecting to other people on LinkedIn and trying to nurture that way. And also a lead magnet where you might have a downloadable, a resource, an ebook, something like that. And you want to design a flow that sort of flows on from there. So as Rob said, the recommendation that I have is that you choose one, the maximum of two of these to incorporate in your 8-week sprint. I might just pause there for a second. Now, Kelly, we've got on the timer 6:54. Is that right? Do I need to sort of run through?
Yeah, please. We've probably got about 6-7 minutes. Sorry, just because we started a few minutes late because I've got a little hiccup. So yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go through each one. So first of all, newsletter is the next slide. So essentially, we want to communicate on a educational basis. So just wait till that one comes up, Cal, sorry. There we go. So this is a basic sort of newsletter, thank you, scenario. So you might have something like where you add them to your database. So sign up or you might simply just send them a welcome email to say thanks for being part of the community, or thanks for subscribing. Here's some of the regular content that we send out. What I like to do there is, you could potentially look at a survey, so something that just asks them maybe their preferences around what they want to get out of, or what sort of topics of interest for them. And something like KO, I don't know if anyone's a sports follower, but if you sign up to KO, they ask exactly that. They ask, what sports do you like? And then your experience reflects that. So that's an example of what you might do there. And then you might have, for example, your general education newsletter. You might have a bit of a case study. Then you might have a particular offer, and then you sort of go back to the newsletter. So there's different ways around it. Some people also have offers in the newsletter as well. So I guess what we're really saying there is that you can't just do it all about education, but you need to have some way of people to go to the next step. Thanks, Kelly. Next one. So online events. Again, if you're thinking of speaking, or if you're creating some education, then this could be a basic sequence that we would recommend. So at the top there, you send out your invitation. The next one might be answering some frequently asked questions that perhaps your prospects might have. You might send a reminder. Last chance. It's next week. Sign up. Then you obviously have a confirmation. Then you might send something a day before, and then 2 hours before. Once they register, then that's where things like Eventbrite can take over and actually do some of this confirmation and previous email and related emails for you. And then you might have sort of like a post-event comms that might say, thanks for attending. We'll see you at the next one, or you've missed out, but here's the recording. And again, you might choose to put them on your newsletter, or you might have just simply keep going with your events. So LinkedIn is great if you're looking to connect with other prospects. And again, this is a sort of basic sequence that I like to use. So you have a really good connection message. Really, for me, it's all about the connection. Make it all about them and not about you. We don't want to come across as salesy straight away, which is what 90% of people do. I don't know if you're like me, but you always get the sales. Let's sell you something. I like to have a thank you for connecting, as simple as that. Then I like to add some value. Maybe it's a resource that's really specific to them. You can take them offline, or ask to have a conversation, or maybe invite them to events. So again, a sort of basic formula there. And we'll just touch quickly on this last one, lead magnet. So again, this is an actual example where you have someone downloads the lead magnet or the resource. Then you have an email that says, thank you for, here's the lead magnet, here's the ebook. You might then introduce yourself, or you might say, this is what else you might be interested in. And you can kind of build your sort of sequence there. Obviously, with an offer at the end can always be good. So again, you can kind of see a pattern there, as long as you sort of conform to the idea of adding value, but also giving people a chance to buy from you, then that's sort of the way forward with lead nurture. And we'll just go, Kelly, the last couple of slides, because maybe a couple of minutes for some questions. So really, in terms of testing and measuring, there's different things that I would recommend you look out for. Split testing is more just a test to see if what messaging works the best, but really for us around lead nurture, you want to look at your open rate. 30+% I think is a good target to shoot for, depending on your audience. You want to see if people are clicking on things and obviously downloading. You can use that as follow-up. You want to check to see how many leads are directly generated from that, and obviously from there you can measure from sales. So just have a think about build yourself some simple metrics depending on the frequency of your communications. So 2 minutes for some Q&A.